Right, greetings everybody and welcome to the 20,000th video, Wotv video that I have recorded today. And today we're going to be taking a look at Dark Veritas, the darkiest. There's no one dark here. Just look at his armor. Okay, enough about that. So Dark Veritas has arrived. He is not fully and complete yet. JP players are quite fairly easily able to get this character up to about, early EX without too much trouble at all. The quest is limited and whatnot. We've already shown a video about that, so please do check that out if you are curious about how to get everything to build this character. Well, I mean, it's not all available yet. Everything so far to build this character. But the friend unit is a little bit more complete, up to level 120, and I thought we'd take a look at him. To be fair, there's nothing that looks absolutely insane about Dark Veritas from a perspective where we are right now, but with the limit burst and the 140 still to come, I'm not too terribly worried about this guy being undersold, because quite frankly, the community will never let Gumi live it down if the Veritas units aren't at least, pretty good. And the last one especially. For Dark Veritas is one of the ones that most people have been waiting for, myself included. He's just a really big armored dude with a massive sword. It's one of the things that I also like in Elden Ring. So let's take a look. So comparatively, for the team that we usually use, you look at Sephiroth here with 1600 attack, we look at Ashen Mont with 1600 attack, we look at Gilgamesh with 1600 magic. All of these stats are generally pretty nice for the current party composition that we have. And you look at Dark Veritas, and with the equipment he's repping, it's actually pretty impressive. 2k attack, about 11,000 HP, 108 speed. Not necessarily the fastest or the most tanky character, but I think he represents quite well as seen in this party, and his resistances are generally pretty nice for what we're going to be testing today. So I don't think there's too much else to say about it. Let's get in and see how it works. So on our standard pincer map, let's get it moving, starting off with moving all of our characters inwards. As we're not too worried about synergy, we're just going to take a rainbow style pattern and see how it ends up working with Dark Veritas. So thankfully, him being last means that we are capable of getting a bunch of other characters buffed before he gets his first turn. And now here we have Dark Veritas. Now we haven't run any specific buffs on him yet, and his Trust Mastery skill is quite nice of being able to dispel when he does get a critical hit. It'll be interesting to see how this synergizes with potential future units, as it is a quite powerful Trust Mastery, but with the limitation of it being a helmet, which is not equipable by many characters. It'll be interesting to see where it lands, if anything. Now we also do have our skills that we do want to cast at the get-go, but let's just try some attacks and see. As we can see, his general attacks here doing pretty decent damage. Firing it off against a few other characters. If we move Dark Veritas up just to get a bit more of an idea against some of these. Damage scales pretty much how we would expect it to in this case. Quite strong against itself. 25% chance of that disable status effect there. And potentially just a few accuracy issues, but most still having some high accuracy abilities means that he is able to compensate for that. Barrier destruction in the sub part of his kit, however, may end up being mandated with the Strider job. However, Striders ability that does have barrier break on it is quite close range, which means that Dark Veritas will have to prove his survivability. So let's move him back out for a second. Start casting his 2 support skills. And we'll run a few more buffs here. Before we try attacking him. And we do want to see how damage resilient he is. But more than that, we also want to check with Dark Veritas about getting just a few cheap hits in so that we can push Dark Veritas into a potentially higher DPS state, as when he takes more damage, he will become stronger. So next up, another ability, and we should be good to go. Starting off with just a gentle tap. We can also see the counter ability here, proccing at 29%, hitting roughly about 3,600 damage. And critically even quite easily up to 4,000. Now looking at Joom's limit burst, quite a bit stronger, but still staying roughly above 50% HP even after that kind of damage. Throwing a few other abilities out there, his damage capability, at least for now, looking pretty sturdy against a character such as Joom. And if we look at this large AoE, again, getting closer to that 50%, but as we get reincarnations, that will become less and less scary. So, once again, let's try hitting him. Proccing, now what you saw there was his below 50% HP proc, or once his HP falls below a certain percentage, certain abilities are activated, such as his AP Restoral, his decreased chance of being targeted, which was something that I missed in the previous video, apologies, but it does decrease his chance of being targeted once his HP falls below 20%, which is pretty nice criteria for him just not being targeted. But we get that 25% agility increase now, as well as for 50% of any damage done to him will, or 50% of the damage that he does will be restorative towards his HP. If we look there, speed has jumped up to 122. So not a bad character to take a first hit, since he will get something out of it later. And so here we are. Now we've taken a few hits. I think we've only taken 3. So if we were comparing to what it was before, starting initially with a defense penetration rate of 40 off of his support skill, has now been increased by a factor of 12% to be just better at dealing damage. And let's see what that damage is looking like. So here, firing off against Joom, only 5% chance of counter. So let's choose 2 characters that can probably take the damage. We do want to be careful that we don't get him killed. Choose these 2, and we'll see how this goes. So about 5,000 HP restored off of a multi-hit attack, and dealt pretty good damage to both of the characters here is quite nice. Now we do need to skip a bunch of abilities, which runs a bit down the turn timer, but just checking out a few other attacks, representing generally really nice damage against other damage dealers. Sephiroth just maybe a little bit more. Gilgamesh with his with his HP barrier, preventing any damage being done against him. But his DPS does actually have room to grow from the very initial point of battle, while also being quite durable himself. I think that Dark Veritas shows off really nicely for early on, considering that he has no reincarnations yet, which usually is a bunch of extra stats for the character to really shine and grow, not to include that we will probably see his own specific piece of equipment eventually, which should also up his performance, providing it's better suited for him than the reliquary. So let's close out the thoughts here. As always with the Veritas units when they show up in the game, it's hard to make too hard of a judgment call for or against them, because who knows what the meta will look like in a few months. The meta has changed a bunch, especially over the last few months for JP users, with tactics being one of the biggest ones, and I'm sure the 5th anniversary will hold a lot of meta shift for us as well. That being said, the old Veritas units that have come out over the course of this entire year are representing incredibly well still, even with some of them coming out before the power upgrade that was Ashenmont and Spring June. So I think that we don't have to worry too much about Dark Veritas staying quite strong for a long time to come. And that's great because he looks awesome. His design is really good, both on 2D and 3D front. And that's a net positive, at the very least, for in my books. So thank you so much for watching. Take care. See you next time.